Formula One on 5 Live.
They said come to the Sunshine State in May, enjoy the Miami heat, they said. Sea, sand and sunshine with a slice of F1. I feel like we've been shortchanged a bit, because right now, as I look out from the commentary box at the entrance of the pit lane at the final corner on the inside this Miami International Autodrome, it's almost flooded with water from the rain that has been pouring down in the last 45 minutes. The sky's now grey and overcast. We've got a race to run, but, well, a bit of rain, a rookie on pole, 19 laps, no pit stops. Maybe I can accept the lack of sunshine for what could be a chaotic second sprint race of the season. And I can confirm the chaos has already started, and we're down to 19 cars as Charles Leclerc on his lap to the grid has hit the wall and damaged his Ferrari car, pulling off the track. He will not make the start of this sprint. Deep breaths, everyone. Welcome to live coverage of the Miami Sprint. My name's Harry Benjamin, and well, I think the rain might have eased off slightly now, but let's get the very latest with Jenny. Have you packed your raincoat, Jenny?
No, it's conveniently sitting at my hotel, waiting for me to be reunited with it. Absolutely no help right now, but it's stopped raining. So we've got these small clusters of downpours. They're very heavy when they happen, and then just like that, they go away again. So not the ideal conditions. I've just been talking to Kimi Antonelli, our pole sitter, one of his mechanics, and I was saying, this isn't exactly the weather he'd have liked, and we agreed that he would have liked a boring race, but this is going to be anything but boring, as Kimi Antonelli just speaks to his father, who's alongside him, and his father just lovingly gave him a bit of a slap round the cheeks. I don't know what's going on, but Pete Bonington, the other father figure for Kimi Antonelli, his race engineer, of course, we know him so well from his days with Lewis Hamilton. He's stood beside him, and what must Kimi Antonelli be feeling right now? Goodness knows. He did save us, smiles at me. He's got an umbrella just shading him from any potential rain. But what a moment for F1. What a moment for Antonelli.
Certainly is, Jenny, as well, the driver's still gearing up to head out onto the grid, which has started to get packed up. Indeed, the marquees are out covering the cars to try and keep them as dry as possible. I'm very pleased to be joined for the remainder of the weekend in the commentary box by the 1996 Formula One World Champion, Damon Hill. Damon, first of all, welcome. Thank you for joining us this weekend. And, well, you've joined for the chaos.
Well, thanks for having me, Harry, and I'm really looking forward to this. As you say, the action has already started, and we haven't actually got the cars to the grid. Well, we've got most of them to the grid, but Charles Leclerc, we saw from our commentary box, we saw his car, a sad-looking Ferrari, going past our window on the back of a pickup truck. Not the way they would have liked to start, but it was torrential rain, totally a deluge. As you'd expect in this kind of tropical climate that we have here in Florida. There's no hurricanes, I hope, on the horizon, but definitely it could rain again. But currently not raining, so that's good news.
No, but the track's still very much damp. And in terms of Charles Leclerc's incident, we think he was coming towards turn 9, and then it slightly curves to the left at turn 10. And was it just a simple case of aquaplaning into the wall?
Well, he looked like he was going pretty quickly. It wasn't like an easy drive to the grid. He was obviously exploring the conditions, and I think he found that the conditions were, unfortunately, too deep. I've seen some of the radio communications, and a lot of the drivers were saying this is undrivable. I wasn't sure whether he was on full wet, or whether he was on inters. Some were sent out on inters, so intermediate tyres don't have the capacity to remove the water as much, so it's possible he was on those. I'm going to try and find out.
Well, let's head down to Jenny, who's with Christian Horner at Red Bull.
Yes, it's incredibly loud, so I apologise for that. But Christian, these conditions are going to be tricky for everybody, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be anything can happen in these conditions, as you say, a street track or a non-permanent track. All the walls around, and it's not really designed to drain the water here. So the first time we've run in the wet in Miami in 4 years.
Yeah, it's going to be a different and interesting race, I think, albeit short and sharp, much like the rain. Is there any more rain expected, do you know?
There's a bit more behind this, but there's a dry patch before, so it can dry very quickly here, so let's see.
And how do you think Max is going to fare today? Obviously the news that he's now a new father, I don't think that's going to distract him too much, do you?
No, look, that's wonderful news for him and Kelly and their family, but his mind is very much focused on the job.
Okay, good luck, thank you.
Jenny Gow speaking with Red Bull team principal Christian Horner then. So we think we might maybe have escaped another downpour, but I mean, we were looking at the radar coming into this weekend. There was a band of rain about, but for Sunday's Grand Prix. So the weather changing all the time in this part of Miami, but that doesn't deter the fans who have absolutely packed out the grandstands. Let's talk though about our pole sitter, the youngest man to do it, Kimi Antonelli, Damon. And Jenny was saying, the pressure that comes with getting that first pole. You've had a few poles in your time in Formula One. What is that pressure like?
Not when I was 18. I was still at school, I think. Anyway,
he's still doing his maths exam.
Unbelievable what he did. He looked like he was on it from the word go. I was watching him drive yesterday, and he looked like he was enjoying this circuit. He looked like he was driving that car, finding out the limit, and he just pulled that lap off. I think there was track evolution. So in other words, the track was getting quicker as more cars put laps down. So he came out at the right time. Some of the other drivers, George Russell and Max Verstappen, went early, and perhaps they missed out a little bit there. But definitely the track was coming to him, but he still did a good job. And Oscar Piastri could potentially have gone quicker and got pole position, but he made a mistake on the last corner. I think he locked up a little bit or understeered a little bit. So the true potential of the car, I think he's made a few people sit up and take notice, and he's absolutely smashed the youngest pole sitter record by 2.5 years, I think, from Sebastian Vettel, who was 21. An old man.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Also alongside us is the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson. I mean, he does smash those records. And actually, though, I think this is maybe, we said it in practice, Andrew, didn't we? This is the first weekend where we've seen Kimi looking quicker, looking closer to his teammate George Russell, and then he goes and pips him when it counts in the sprint qualifying.
Yeah, so the record's just very briefly is a tricky one, because is this a pole or not?
Wow.
So anyway, we'll just park that one for a minute.
Started.
I went down to Mercedes yesterday evening and spent some time talking to Toto Wolff and asked him, what's changed for this weekend. And Antonelli's been sort of bedding himself slowly into Formula One. His biggest thing for the start of the season was to not crash in practice or qualifying and ruin a weekend because of how much that can put you on the back foot. But Toto was saying that he's been pushing that bit harder this weekend. Feels more confidence in the car. Felt it from the very first lap, and so that's why I think we've seen him. This is the first time that he's given some kind of indication of the sort of potential that everybody said he had. He did a great move outside of turn 9 in Melbourne in the wet in the race, overtaking move. But he's been lagging just off the pace just a little bit compared to George Russell until this weekend, and he's obviously extending himself a little bit more, and wow, look what an effect it's had.
Well, let's hear from the 18-year-old Italian after securing pole for the sprint race.
I'm feeling over the moon. I did not expect it, but I was feeling good in the car. I was able to improve lap by lap and find that consistency. And that lap came all together, and I'm super happy with that. And now we will enjoy this moment a little bit more. But as well, I wanna focus on tomorrow, because I really want to try and repeat myself.
There must be massive emotions. Were you going to find your dad there to give him a hug, and the journey that you've all been on to get to F1 and reach this milestone? Yeah,
I mean, definitely it was really nice, and also to find him in the garage right after qualifying, and I'm super happy to share this moment with him, and it's so important to me as well, and he's like a rock, and I know I can always rely on him, so really happy to share this moment with him. Unfortunately, I would like to share it with my mom and my sister as well, but hopefully next time.
You said you'll switch that focus quite quickly to the sprint tomorrow and the rest of the weekend, so what's your thinking there and the fight ahead?
Well, definitely, we did quite a long run in FP1 to try and gather as many information as possible. Of course, we don't really know the pace of the other. But I guess we will see tomorrow during the race. And then about the qualifying, I mean, the track is going to keep evolving, so it's going to be important to be on top of it and try to repeat ourselves.
Kimi Antonelli then speaking after securing a pole for the sprint race. Well, the question is, Damon, can he hold on?
Or is it a pole? We're not going to go down this. He's fastest in qualifying for the sprint race. And of course, he was wrong about the track evolution now, because it's totally wet. But he will have his head full of possibilities. I mean, it's difficult enough leading this bunch of incredible racing drivers from pole position, or the front of the grid. But when you've got a wet track and his experience in these conditions is relatively limited, the advantage, of course, is he will be able to see where he's going, but he will be the first person to hit a puddle if there's one round the back. And you heard Christian Horner talking about the track not draining. But the pictures we're looking at now, it's not actually raining, and if the sun breaks through, then this will dry very quickly. But whether we're going to get a dry, it's very unlikely. I think we'll see a dry line before the end of this race. It's so short.
And actually, just a message from race control coming in. The formation lap will be started behind the safety car, as they did have a few moments ago one of the sweepers on track, just trying to clear the racing line of some water. But let's head back down to Jenny Gow. Jenny, do we think it has stopped raining now?
No.
Oh.
Certainly down here in the pit lane, bearing in mind this is 5 kilometres of track, so you get a different part of weather. But in the pit lane, it's just started to just give a little smattering of rain. Not too heavy at the moment, but I think it could come in quite quickly when it does. So just watch out for that. And looking at the Mercedes garage just at the back of it, there's Valtteri Bottas, the reserve driver, saying hi to him. And right next to Toto Wolff. This will be a sweaty palms moment, I'm sure, watching his young protege try and take the front row start and deliver a result for the team.
Yeah, it's going to be a really intriguing 19 laps. That's how long this sprint race is, a 100-kilometre dash to the end. No mandatory pit stops in this one. Let's see how that unfolds with the potential of the track drying out, but we'll see if that happens or not. In terms of points, well, you get 8 points for the win, 7 for second, 6 for third, all the way down to 1 point for 8th place. So only the top 8 are getting points in this one. That's what's going on right at the very front with Kimi Antonelli. But Damon, he's going to have his mirrors filled, come rain or shine, with the 2 McLarens right behind him.
Yeah, if they start this behind the safety car and they do a kind of rolling start, that's going to be a massive help to him, because that's what the procedure will be, is they'll go around, explore, and then eventually the safety car will say, I'm not sure whether they're actually going to go to a standing start or not. They might just be the few laps behind the safety car. What do you think, Andrew?
I think they make it up as they go along.
Oh dear, no. It's not supposed to be like that.
I'm not sure they know just right now, Dave.
Okay, well, anyway, listen, I'm sure he'd be quite happy to start a rolling start. Would be much more preferable than doing a standing start. Getting these things off the line in the dry is hard enough, but when it's wet, you can very easily get wheel spin. He wants everything to run smoothly as possible, and of course, the more laps behind the safety car, the closer he's getting to the end.
Just a case of holding on until that checkered flag flies.
Not great for us to commentate on, but
we like to throw you in at the deep end, Damon.
Well, I'll keep talking as much as I can, Harry. Then I'll hand over to you and Andrew. And yeah, it's going to be tense sitting there. You're absolutely right. He will have woken up this morning and gone, oh my God, I'm going to be on the front row for a Formula One race, and I'm only 18. And I don't think he ever thinks. He seems like a very confident guy. I don't think he doubts he can do it. He's won races, don't forget, in every other Formula he's been in, so he's used to winning. It's just this is a bit bigger.
Well, also, a lot of the build-up of this weekend, once again, is obviously focusing on the top 2 in the Drivers' Championship right now. Oscar Piastri heads that by 10 points to his teammate Lando Norris. This is the first opportunity where there are more points available. That dynamic, Damon, what have you made of it so far? So much is said of Oscar Piastri being quite cool, calm and collected. Lando, the heart on his sleeve type character. Yeah. What have you made of it all?
Well, that has been quite a stark contrast in terms of their personalities and the way they communicate about themselves to the world. I think Oscar is still relatively, it's his 3rd year in Formula One. He seems like someone who's not comfortable performing to the camera, let's say. He's much more reserved, but he has a kind of inner calm and confidence to him. But, when you put these guys into a world championship showdown situation, then all sorts of things happen. So we haven't really seen fully, I don't think, Oscar, what he's made of. And I think the same will apply to Lando as well, because at the moment they've got the class of the field car. They're in with a chance of getting great results, and they're just watching now as they're taking the covers off the tyres, and we see they're on intermediates. Everyone looks like they're on intermediates now, not full wet.
So Carlos Sainz in the Williams in 15th, he's definitely got wets on according to the Formula One timing screen. The FIA have sent through a message saying that Race Control have taken the decision to start the formation lap on time behind the safety car to clear any standing water from the track. But of course that message just asks a whole load more questions that they haven't answered in it, which is like, will they just do the formation lap behind the safety car? Will they bring them to the grid for a standing start? Will they continue behind the safety car for a few laps to clear more standing water? Let's find out.
Well, they are about to head down towards turn 1 from that pole position mark. It's about 176 metres down towards turn 1 before you then head into a right-hander. Left-right sweepers make up the majority of sector 1 before you're then full throttle down turn 9 and 10. That's where Charles Leclerc had his incident on the way to the grid. A reminder, Leclerc not in this race. Then you get to the heavy braking zone of turn 11 where it U-bends round through 12 and 13. An elevation change, tight and twisty up through 14 and 15, which sees you out down the back straight, 1.2 kilometres all the way down to the heavy braking zone of turn 17, and then it's a left-right sweeper that finishes off the lap. Let's take you through how they line up on the grid in full. It's Kimi Antonelli on pole for Mercedes in this sprint. The two McLarens behind him, Oscar Piastri followed by Lando Norris. Max Verstappen starts third with George Russell rounding out the top 5. There'll be a gap where Charles Leclerc should be in 6th, not taking part in this sprint. Then comes Lewis Hamilton in 7th, Albon, Hadjar and Alonso the top 10, with Hulkenberg 11th ahead of Esteban Ocon. Pierre Gasly is 13th ahead of Liam Lawson and Carlos Sainz. Lance Stroll will start 16th. Jack Doohan 17th ahead of Yuki Tsunoda. Didn't get his final run in time in sprint qualifying yesterday. We'll have some work to do to score points from 18th. Gabriel Bortoletto 19th with Ollie Behrman 20th and last, as we're getting a proper look at what the conditions are like now, David, for these cars on the formation lap.
Yeah, we perhaps should explain that some of the guys at the back of the grid were very unlucky because they sent them out at the end of the qualifying session. They had not enough time to complete a lap, and I think a lot of people were backing up. So some of those guys, Ollie Behrman and Tsunoda, were denied the chance of showing what they could do. That's why they're so far back. But here we are, as we're getting closer and closer to the start-finish line. I've not seen any notification to say what the safety car is going to do yet, but if he turns...
visibility even in P2 is terrible, and a big river in turn 10.
Copy, Oscar, understood.
Well, Oscar Piastri saying visibility is tough. We've got more news, Andrew, from the FIA.
Yeah, they say there's going to be an extra formation lap behind the safety car. It feels like we might get news on a lap-by-lap basis here.
Yeah. I was going to say that they will turn off the lights on the safety car, and that's the indication to the drivers. Antonelli, he'll be watching that safety car and be very keen to, probably wants to actually do a few bit. What's on board now with Max Verstappen. I'm not sure why they're showing a replay of Max Verstappen on board, so either to show how bad the visibility is, or he had a moment.
Yeah, it was a bit of both, I think. But I think what's important here, Harry, is that this is still the formation lap. It's an extra lap behind the safety car, but it's not a racing lap behind the safety car, so to speak. So they're not taking off any laps from the race distance.
Yeah, so we'll still get the full 19 as it currently stands. Verstappen couldn't get the car stopped in the final corner, went deep. She lost some positions out on track, so he'll try and recover them as he spins back around onto the circuit. He hasn't actually managed to get back up into that 4th spot yet. He's currently behind Lewis Hamilton, who is in 7th. So while, let's hear from Antonelli.
Can't see anything behind the safety car.
Okay, copy.
Antonelli saying he can't see anything behind the safety car. Indeed, if you're in the middle of the pack, which is what Verstappen is trying to do right now and get himself back to that 4th place, which he is entitled to do so. The last car hadn't passed him. Overtaking, tricky because the absolute plumes of water that are coming off the rear wings of these Formula 1 cars make visibility so tough.
Yeah, I mean, it's in his interest to keep them going round behind the safety car, because the fewer laps there are, the closer he gets to winning.
Problem is they can't keep going. We got a message saying starting procedure suspended. I was going to say they can't keep going like this because the car's only got a certain amount of fuel in them.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah,
but I was going to show my ignorance and saying, well, how are they going to get to the end of the race?
Exactly.
Because I was wondering about that, but I'm surprised that they weren't counting off the laps, because you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, this visibility is genuinely the worst I've ever had in a race car.
Copy that.
Oh, that was Oscar Piastri once again saying how bad the visibility is, and that has brought out a red flag from race control. So that is the race being stopped, well, before it's even begun, really. 1.5 formation laps being done with Bert Mailander at the wheel of the Aston Martin safety car, heading the field as they make their way now around the final corner. The visibility just so difficult around this, what is a temporary track really, made up of public roads and service roads that revolves around the Miami Dolphins NFL Stadium. This is the sound of Lewis Hamilton in 7th as he tries and turns into the final corner. The left-hander gets a snap on the steering wheel, has to correct it, tentatively making his way back into the pit lane as they feed past us in the commentary box and head towards Jenny Gow.
Yes, I've got the front row seat. I'm right next to the Mercedes garage as all the team members, Team Radio.
I have a problem with my visor. I think all the water is going in between the tear-offs.
Lance Stroll with a problem with his visor then for the Canadian down in Aston Martin. So he'll try and do some changes, Jen, before we, if we get this race back underway.
Yeah, funnily enough, the team to my right are Aston Martin, so I'll get eyes on Stroll when he comes in. And the team to my left, Mercedes, so I'll have eyes on our pole sitter, or what would be pole sitter if this race ever actually gets underway. It feels so humid now. The weather seems to be a bit warmer, so maybe that front has passed us by. It's certainly not raining at the moment, but you can't believe the hive of activity that descends on the pit lane as soon as that red flag is out. All the teams go back, all the trucks are whizzing past me. Williams' truck of Carlos Sainz 55 is just being pulled back. The gazebos are coming out as well. So all the cars line up in the pit lane in the order that they were in as the red flag came out. So they don't pull into their pit boxes. So it's a case of stay where you are, stay put. It might not be anywhere near your garage. So there's a lot of chaos and running around at the moment. But there's cars in front of me, Team Radio.
Can we change the headrest again? I'm way too far back.
Max Verstappen wanting a change of headrest, not feeling incredibly comfortable inside that Red Bull as the engineers get going on that. I mean, David, it can't be a particularly fun thing to sit still in a bit of a wet and damp Formula One car, can it?
Well, I sat in a car for an hour in Belgium once when it was pouring with rain, and because they had a massive crash, you may remember, in 98, there was a huge pile-up on the first lap, and rather than get out, because I didn't know how long the delay would be, it was obviously it was going to be a long time, but it turned out to be about an hour, and I was dying for a pee by the end of it, and I was determined not to get out of my car and break the concentration. But I've seen a lot. Here we are now, and they've all jumped out. So you're pumped up, you're ready for the race start, and then suddenly it's all off, and it's a kind of reset. If you're not careful, you can let all that mental preparation just dissipate, and so they will go through a process of. Well, they're obviously talking with their engineers. We're watching this on the screen now as we're watching Fernando Alonso walking out looking classically casual about the whole thing. He's seen this a million times. But he is going on over to the pit wall to talk to the engineers. They want to get absolutely clear what the procedure is. Are they going to reduce the race distance? I don't think they're going to refuel the cars because they're in the pit lane. So there might be a discussion about that.
Talking of begging further questions, Damon, does that mean that you did the entire Belgian Grand Prix in 1998, your first win for Jordan, desperate for the Lou? Yeah,
so that was probably about 3 hours. If you go from the first start and the accident and then the race itself, we went for the whole 2 hours. Yeah, I was, I'm not going to. Can we change the subject? Don't worry, there was nothing improper that happened. I can assure you that. But I was absolutely freezing at the end of that race.
Some drivers do that, what you just talked
about. I've met some, I can tell you, and they've. I don't approve, is all I can say.
Well, I mean, maybe a bit cross. Was it Mark Webber at I can't remember what track, but in a very rainy, and he wasn't feeling particularly well, and was a little bit sick.
2007 Japanese Grand Prix, he wasn't a little bit sick, he threw up in his helmet.
Well, I didn't want to say it point blank.
The conversation is getting quite unpleasant here. Anyway.
Welcome to BBC Sports coverage of Formula One, David Hill.
So, apologies if you were expecting to hear a race. We do have to fill a bit now while they are deciding what to do and when they're going to restart this. And lots of action. We're looking at pictures of the pit. I've never seen so many people in the pit lane and cars, and there's everyone with all the accessories that they've got in there.
Well, what have you made, Damon, of the Miami atmosphere and the fact, it's just been announced we're going to be here for some years yet, 2041. It is so hectic here. I mean, every American race that we have this year almost has a sort of different vibe of what we expect. This one in Miami feels like it's very much an event with a Formula One race attached.
Yeah, it still obviously counts as a round of the world championship, but the novelty factor of it being at a football stadium and it being a makeshift track around the outside, and it's a great venue. I mean, this is my first time here. It's so impressive when you arrive, but it's got a lot of facilities for people, obviously, because it's used to handling thousands and thousands of people at the time. But their fans seem to love it. The grandstands are packed, and Formula One has exploded in the United States. There is now a huge following, and people want to get close to this event, this sport. And it's a street circuit. It's not like Monaco. It's quite sweeping. There's lots of there's probably more faster corners. I mean, some parts of it, probably from say 10 to 11, is a little bit like the tunnel in Monaco, and of course the tunnel wouldn't get wet. That's where Charles Leclerc left. We think that's where he went off and aquaplaned into the wall. So they've got some very fast, sweepy parts of the circuit, which are a problem when it's wet, because you only need one small mistake and you're off into the wall. And so it is a proper street circuit from that point of view. There are walls everywhere. Well, there's runoffs from some of the places we saw Max going earlier, going on at the end of the straight, and they've got runoff there, but the paint on that is extremely slippery. So
lose all grip.
We watched the qualifying for the academy, and they started on slicks, and then it rained, so they were the first people to experience this track in the wet this year, and lots of cars using the escape road. But of course, there's still the potential there for damaging your car, and so far so good, but we haven't started a race yet.
No, if you are just joining us and expecting to be in the throes of a sprint race, the second of the season, the 20th since they were introduced in Formula One, well, we're having to just wait a little bit, because an absolute deluge of rain has been pouring down over the last hour or so, on and off, and it has at the moment, just from a glance outside the commentary box, eased off in terms of the actual rainfall, but the track incredibly wet. We've had 2 formation laps behind the safety car, where visibility has been the biggest complaint from all 19 drivers that remain in this one. Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, who was due to start this race from 6th position, crashed on the lap to the grid, and we're actually just hearing the sounds of what happened, and that was the thud of Charles Leclerc heading straight into the wall, Damon. Front right, rear right, damaged completely.
It was unabated speed, really, wasn't it? He's obviously hit a puddle, and he was cornering at the time. As I was saying, it's a straight. It's taken normally as it's easy flat out, but of course when it's got that much water on it, and you put a slight corner in there as well, then you hit a puddle, then you're going to go at a tangent straight into the wall, and he went very quickly into that wall. He was on intermediates. You can see there, he wasn't on the full wets.
Yeah, and it wasn't like he spun and lost control. He just drove straight into the wall, and I think there's a radio message from him saying he just aquaplaned. He said he wasn't even going that fast, he thought. So yeah, you hit the puddle in these cars, it's like a surfboard basically, which the wheels come off the ground. That's basically what aquaplaning means. So you've just got no control.
Yeah, and well, that has put Charles Leclerc out of this sprint. Of course, the full focus then for them suddenly becomes getting that car back and repaired in time for qualifying for the Grand Prix later on this afternoon. But the remainder of the cars then, once the red flag has now come out after 1.5 formation laps, have made it back to the pits, and majority of them all out of their cars. Oscar Piastri, helmet off, sat with his overalls slightly down to his waist level on what looks to be a bit of a deck chair, just chilling and staying in the zone. He is our championship leader right now by 10 points. He's got 99 to his name, ahead of his teammate Lando Norris. Max Verstappen sits third in the drivers' standings, with George Russell and Charles Leclerc rounding out the top 5. Over in the constructors, McLaren, the reigning champions, lead the way. They've got a 77-point advantage over Mercedes. Then come Red Bull, with Ferrari in 4th. Best of the rest at the moment being led by the Williams team. Double points finishes for them last time out in Saudi Arabia sees them jump ahead of Haas, who now go back to being in 6th, ahead of Aston Martin. Racing Bulls, Alpine and Sauber make up the remainder of the 10 teams in this championship, with all 10 making up points so far after 5 rounds of racing. We had the sprint in China as well, so we now return to Miami for the second sprint of the season, as the pit lane is absolutely jam-packed full of not only cars, engineers, mechanics, hospitality guests overlooking the gantries on top of the garages, which are in the shadow of the Miami Dolphins NFL team. The Hard Rock Stadium also hosts things like the Miami Open, ATP and WTA tennis tournaments as well. It's a whole mismatch of sports that take place around here.
And it's a fantastic venue, as I was saying, but the hospitality or the team centres are within the stadium. So you have this really weird situation where when the action's about to start, you leave the stadium and go out.
So they're on the actual pitch, aren't they?
Exactly. Yeah. It's all back to front.
It's of course I don't think they did that I wasn't here in the first year. This is only my second year to Miami, and I think they switched things around the second year we came to Miami. Originally they didn't have the hospitality units on the pitch, but they've since expanded and rejigged it, and I think it works really well. It sort of adds to the experience of coming to Miami, really. And on top of that, we talk about this place being such an event. Well, the teams absolutely buy into that as well. Slight livery changes as well. We've got pretty much a fully pink Racing Bulls, which actually had a pretty nice livery anyway, but they've gone pink for this weekend, and full Miami Vice vibes for them, and Mercedes running a slightly different pink and purple overalls on their two drivers, Kimi Antonelli and George Russell.
I missed the memo on that. Why are they wearing the different colours?
Well, I think it's sort of a shout to the Miami Vice kind of vibe, and I don't really know, Damon, if I'm honest. I'm just kind of grasping here, but I'm just thinking, is that kind of the cool Miami vibe, beach vibe colours we're going for here?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's
a bit like your shirt.
It's a bit my shirt. I wonder when you bring that up. So I am wearing one of those kind of flowery Hawaiian type.
Sorry, we'll come back to your shirt, Damon. Jenny Gowles down at Aston Martin.
Sorry to interrupt the shirt chat, but I'm here with Andy Cowell. Andy, thank you for coming across and speaking to us. We're not actually allowed into the pit lane, so that's good. Team principal of Aston Martin. A good day yesterday for Fernando, qualifying 10th, but right now everything's on pause.
Yeah, exactly. The rain that's come down is quite heavy, and the visibility and the grip levels are pretty bad at the moment. So it's a waiting game now. There is a little bit of blue sky up there and it's brightened up, but how long will it take for the track to dry? Never had rain here before, so we're all wondering, and we're all looking at the weather radar to work out what's going to happen.
So I think we've just got news that 12:25, so we've got about 8 minutes until race starts. So I'm sure you're going to want to be somewhere else quite quickly. But how does the team cope with this? It's quite a big interruption, isn't it, for the normal process?
Yeah, it's just looking at the conditions, but keeping everybody focused, keeping the drivers and the engineers just focused that, the race is still on. We've got to be prepared and, got to make the most of it.
Okay, and I know you want to get back, but what are you hoping for Fernando for today?
We've got to stay on the track. We've got to stay on the track. We've got to get to the checkered flag and, hope we can get the most out of it.
Okay, good luck. Thank you so much, Andy Cowell, team principal of Aston Martin.
Thanks, Jenny Gow. Indeed, the sprint race will start at 12:25 local time. It's currently 12:18. So teams now starting to get prepared again as we look to get this second sprint race of the season underway. We've just seen shots from inside race control with the race director, Maroon Marquez, assisted by Claire Dubelman, the assistant deputy race director, I should say, in action, calling the shots this weekend as Carlos Sainz in his Williams does up his overalls, puts his balaclava on, followed by the hands device and his yellow, red and blue helmet design, which then slides on top of his head as he gets ready to get back inside his Williams car. So looks like we're going to get some racing then. Oh, it's just been delayed now. The sprint race will start at 12:28 local time, so that is a correction that's just come up on the race controls screen. So we're working to 12:28 now, so let's hope that does indeed come about, as the sweepers have been out on track, and there's a couple still out there just trying to aid with the drying and the drainage of this just over 5.4 kilometre circuit. Damon, we've spoken about some of the top drivers just off the back of Jenny speaking to Andy Cowell there. I mean, Aston Martin, what have your takes been on how their season's been so far? It's been a pretty dire start for them.
Yeah, they're not front runners, are they? I mean, they're struggling to get. I mean, Fernando's managed to get it into the top 10, which is quite
Yeah, his qualifying effort here has been. He is
well,
10th,
for the sprint, of
For
course.
sprint,
We should emphasise there is a qualifying session later on today, and of course this delayed start is eating into the time they have between, unless they delay that one as well. But of course that also puts pressure on everyone, because if there's any serious damage in this race, and there's a high chance of that because it's wet, then the mechanics have really got their work cut out to get things ready for the main event, qualifying for the Grand Prix on Sunday.
Of course, Parc Fermé will reopen after this sprint race, and any tweaks and changes to the setup can be made before they are locked in for Grand Prix qualifying and the race. You can hear full coverage of qualifying for Sunday's Grand Prix on the BBC Sport website and app. Will be on air from about 8:45 this evening, ahead of the green light for the session starting at 9 o'clock. So that will be the full-blown Grand Prix qualifying that we will get underway for. But waiting for the clock to tick down to 12:28 local time before we get this sprint race underway. That doesn't seem to deter the fans, who are all smiling in the grandstands. Go on, David.
Well, it just occurred to me they might not do it they might not go around behind the safety car for this one, but because it has
traditional formation.
Yeah, I'm starting to see sort of what looks like less wet bits outside of our commentary window. So in other words, not shiny puddly bits. It's starting to get that matte look to it. The track is draining if it's not drying.
Well, definitely does look a lot dry at one point, about an hour or 45 minutes out before we were initially supposed to get this sprint race underway. A deluge of rain leaving the track almost flooded. It's still very hot and humid here, about 76% humidity. Track temperatures around about 31 degrees at the moment. It is certainly the Miami heat across the weekend, which really does play a factor. The pit lane absolutely jam-packed while the drivers and teams await the call to head back out onto the circuit. So we'll see how they line this one up. A little bit further back in the midfield, or actually heading the midfield, best of the rest right now, Damon, is Williams currently after that double points finish in Saudi Arabia. Carlos Sainz made a bit of a mistake yesterday in sprint qualifying. That's why you see him down the order in 15th. Albon, though, up inside the top 8. Williams are really running well this year, aren't they?
Yes, they are. And of course, they are. You've got to give James Vowles a little bit of time. You know, they've made some changes. James came in, was it 2 years ago now? But anyway, they are heading gradually in the right direction and putting in place the building blocks for, if you like, a new Williams team, a Williams Mark II, which is going to be more ready, I think, for this contemporary modern Formula One that we have. I think it needed to change. They went through a lot of upheaval, financial difficulties and so forth, so it's going to take some time, but they're getting there steadily, bit by bit. They've got great drivers there, and also Alex Albon has stepped up to the challenge, if you like, of Carlos arriving, who is a highly rated driver. They've got a strong lineup, but of course, you know, you cannot afford to have weak links in the driver package, and they don't. But Carlos is, he's going to have to work really hard to get familiar with the team and show what he can do. At the moment, he's finding it a little bit unfamiliar, perhaps, and Alex is doing a great job. But they both had good races this season.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I suppose, do we underestimate how long a driver needs to get settled in their new surroundings? You know, even Carlos Sainz was saying about how he's not surprised to see Lewis Hamilton struggling at Ferrari either.
Yeah, this is it. These cars, somebody described it, I think I remember hearing one of the drivers saying it's as different driving a different car from a different marque in a different team as it is going from F2 to F1. They're that different. You know, the cars are so different in the way they're conceived, in the way they behave, in the way the feedback comes, and also the procedures they have in place, and the way they go about their racing can be hugely different. So it's a lot of learning, and these cars are complicated. It is a bit like learning to fly a different aeroplane, I should think, rather than just jumping out and going, okay, well that's easy. In the old days, of course, they used to drive everything, and my dad's day they would drive some sports cars, Formula 1 cars, Formula 2 cars. They'd be jumping in and out of cars all the time, so they were getting more chance to broaden their experience. But of course, you could spend, like Lewis, you could spend a decade in the same car with the same people doing it the same way. So when you move from one team to another, then of course it can be a long process to get familiar and understand the language of the new team.
I suppose back in the day as well, they'd have more time to get in those other bits of machinery. Now 24 races on the calendar.
Yeah, well,
where's the time?
No, they don't have time now. They are wholly committed to the teams they race for in Formula 1.
Okay, so we have been informed that when we leave the pit lane, the race will start. So we will be taking the grid start.
Okay, so when they leave the pit lane, they'll be taking to the grid to start the race. So let's see, that's what Yuki Tsunoda.
And that was Tsunoda, so he's presumably not going to start from the pit lane, or he was previously.
Well, he was down in 18th, and because as you mentioned, Damon, there was a lot of runners yesterday that missed the chance to get their final lap across the board. I think Jack Doohan was very vocal on the radio, very upset with his team that he lost the chance to get through into the second part of sprint qualifying. So the likes of Doohan, Tsunoda, Ollie Behrman too, Behrman's teammate.
So there's no more rain expected currently.
Might finish on slicks.
That was Esteban Ocon replying to his engineer Laura Müller, saying we might well finish on slicks on the dry tyre, because I have to say we've just seen the Aston Martin medical car making its way around and not kicking up any spray on that medical car, so that does bode well. And visibly from us, as we look outside the commentary box, it looks dry.
I'm craning my neck now, Harry. I'm looking outside the window directly underneath me, and I can see dry tarmac.
Oh, exciting!
Unfortunately, it's not on the racetrack. It's just in commentary.
The gap between us and the pit lane.
But it's there. It is dry.
So there's a message from the FIA again. It says the current plan is to have 2 laps behind the safety car in order to give all drivers a chance to go through turn 1 and then make a decision on standing versus rolling start.
Okay, so that's what is going to happen then in the next few minutes. It's 12:26 local time. Race control saying they want this race back underway at 12:28, so they will leave the pit lane at that time, 2 formation laps before we then get the chance to see whether we will get a standing start or a rolling start. I'm hopeful for a standing start, but let's see what they do. Kimi Antonelli, the Mercedes rookie, the man with the unenviable task of replacing Lewis Hamilton at that team, gets his first ever pole position. Well, whether you count a sprint pole or not, he's starting from the very front of the grid on a Formula 1 race weekend. Oscar Piastri in the McLaren will start alongside him. Lando Norris in third, ahead of Max Verstappen from fourth. George Russell in the second Mercedes rounds out the top 5. Charles Leclerc will not be taking part, having crashed out on his way to the grid initially when we had an absolute downpour of rain damaging his Ferrari car. They'll be rushing to get that fixed in time for Grand Prix qualifying later on today. Lewis Hamilton from 7th, ahead of Alex Albon Williams in 8th. Isaac Hadjar will go from 9th spot, ahead of Fernando Alonso. Nico Hülkenberg in 11th, ahead of Esteban Ocon 12th. Pierre Gasly 13th. Liam Lawson 14th, with Carlos Sainz rounding out the top 15 for Williams. Lance Stroll's Aston Martin will go from 16th, ahead of Jack Doohan's Alpine. Then Yuki Tsunoda from 18th in the Red Bull, ahead of Gabriel Bortoleto, Sauber, and Ollie Behrman 20th and last. He had a crash in FP1, did Behrman, and struggling a little bit yesterday in sprint qualifying, but was one of those to miss out on a final lap before the checkered flag flew. We saw a lot of traffic problems yesterday in the sprint qualifying, and overtaking here can be rather tricky. We've got 3 DRS zones in the run down to turn 1. We won't get those, of course, because we're under wet conditions. See how dry it does end up being. If it can dry out enough, race control might elect to enable DRS, but we've got a long back straight, 1.2 kilometres, resulting in a heavy braking zone of turn 17. That could be a prime overtaking spot, as the cars, Damon, are now back on track.
Yes, they are. So I don't think they'll be complaining quite so much about the spray. It doesn't look as bad. There is spray, but a lot of water is drained from the track in the time that we've been waiting to get underway again. So we'll listen to some of the comments from the drivers. I'm sure they'll be on the radio communicating whether or not they think this is going to start, or whether or not they want to start as a standing start as well. And it's not necessarily down to them, but the race director will be listening to what the drivers have to say.
Yeah, doing these formation laps just to allow the drivers to all experience what it's like coming into turn 1 at high speed before they decide on whether we will have a standing start from the grid or a rolling start, much like the American way in the IndyCar series. So let's see how that unfolds, as they are now out on track behind the Aston Martin safety car driven by Bernd Mailand. Still a little bit of spray being kicked up, but nowhere near as bad, I think, as what we had on those first formation laps, what seems about half an hour ago.
Yeah, it was literally teeming and sort of streaming off of the cameras, or the onboard cameras on the cars before, and that's no longer the case. So it does bode well. Whether they'll do it, I think they'll probably do one more lap, but we'll see. It could be someone's going to make a bold decision and say, okay, let's go for the standing start.
Well, weaving left, weaving right, getting temperature into the intermediate tyres, which is what every single driver has gone out there on. Just 19 cars in this one, with Charles Leclerc out.
How conditions?
Raceable now, yeah.
Okay, let's go.
Raceable, that's what Max Verstappen says. I think that's the green light, Damon, no?
Yeah, as I said, I think I'm not surprised he said that. I think they would all prefer to get this underway. They don't like to delay everything. And of course, the fans don't like it either. They want to see a race, we want to see a race, and the drivers want to get on with it, and they want to know whether they're going to be doing a rolling start or not. So we're going to get an answer in a second.
So the lap count is already beginning, and we are still behind the safety car, but we continue on to lap 2 of 18, is according to our timing screen. So they started the race immediately as they left the pit lane. Here's Piastri on the radio.
Yeah, standing water's gone quite a lot. Still a couple of rivers. Visibility is okay. End of the straights are still pretty bad.
That's Piastri had to say about it, as he's still really handing the steering wheel of that McLaren, trying to get as much temperature in those tyres as possible. So the race then has started as soon as they left the pit lane. We're already on to lap 2 of 18, but behind safety car conditions and continuing round.
Standing start from the FIA.
We love to hear it. We love to hear it. Standing start confirmed by race control. So they will be led back to the grids, and we'll get this race properly underway, and it will be a tentative fight down to turn 1. Damon, in these conditions, brave to throw a move to the inside.
I'm so glad I'm not a racing driver anymore. I mean, literally, your body is exploding with adrenaline, and you have to be able to control these emotions, these feelings, and your body is, your heart rate is up there, and you're trying to breathe so you don't get too excited. And then you have to remember the procedure, because now as we watch the safety car slowing down and the car starting to bunch up, they will be when the safety car is pulled off the track, they will have to position themselves in the right place on the grid. We had this Lando Norris in Saudi with the incorrect position on the box on the grid. So you have to, all these things they have to think about. They have to really clear their mind and go through these tick box procedures to prepare themselves for a standing start. It's much easier if you do a rolling start, because you're already up and running.
And I would have been, I think, to the relief of Kimi Antonelli and Mercedes if they just kept going as we were. Interestingly, about being out of position, of course, they're going to have to remember that where Charles Leclerc should be on the grid will be an empty spot. And when you've got an empty spot at that kind of position, that can always lead to a bit of chaos, where people think they're one stop ahead of where they actually are.
Exactly right, Harry. That is such an easy mistake to make. If they've got good race engineers, the race engineer will remind them. It'll be Lewis Hamilton in this case, because he was just behind Charles Leclerc on the grid. So I'm sure he's experienced enough to know not to make that mistake. But as they crawl over the line now and coming up, and we see Kimi Antonelli getting himself on the right-hand side of the grid, he's now moving across to take up the right position for his pole. Well, is it a pole? The first place on the grid after the qualifying for the sprint race, to take up this incredible moment for him, isn't it? And he is on the left-hand side of the track, lining up as the other cars all assemble, slotting into place, watching out for Lewis to see whether he doesn't. There's a void where Charles Leclerc's car would have been.
Pulling up onto the grid then, grey overcast sky still, but any more sign of rain, Jenny Gow?
Yeah, well, there's a few more patches of blue sky, which is good, and actually the Miami heat is doing us a favour, because the track is drying quite quickly as the cars take their places on the grid.
Red Bull's Yuki Tsunoda, after a tough qualifying yesterday, didn't get his final lap, electing to make changes and go from the back. Just 19 cars in this one. Charles Leclerc's Ferrari crashing out on the original run to the grid, but we're about to get the second sprint underway of the year. It's Kimi Antonelli on sprint pole, eyes to the lights, foot to the floor as we go racing in Miami for the sprint. A good start from Oscar Piastri's alongside him, down the inside for the Australian, almost wheel-to-wheel contact, forces Antonelli out wide, who slots in on the inside of turn 3, loses out to Norris and Verstappen as Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari is trying to make gains as well. But after turn 1, it's Oscar Piastri who leads this sprint race ahead of Lando Norris. Then comes Max Verstappen, Kimi Antonelli having to lose positions. I think George Russell has done well too and making gains on his own teammate as the rest of the field now make their way, slipping and sliding through sector 1.
He put me off.
Antonelli straight on the radio saying he pushed me off. We said, Damon, would there be a move down the inside? Piastri made it.
It's a fascinating situation, very similar to Saudi Arabia, because actually in this case we had Oscar Piastri made a very good start and managed to get himself into the right position and used all the track, and unfortunately there was no room left for Kimi Antonelli, and he's now fighting to keep ahead of his teammate George Russell. He's lost 3 places and it's been a bit of a tragic first lap for him, but I mean it was inevitable in a way. Once you get a car down the inside, this is going to happen. I don't think he's going to get away with putting a penalty on Oscar Piastri because it's the first lap, and we've heard this, we've seen this before. The race directors tend to take a view that this is all fair and love and war on the first lap.
Yeah, not only that, but he was really quite alongside. It was very like Saudi Arabia, pretty much fully alongside, so it was his corner basically, so he's allowed to use up all the track.
The championship leader then, who started second in this sprint, has now taken the lead at the end of, well, lap 1 after the standing start. It's technically lap 4 after 2 formation laps behind the safety car after a bit of a delay to get this sprint race on. But visibility for those further back can still prove difficult following in the mist and the spray spewing off the rear wing of these Formula 1 cars. Lap 4 of 18 of the Miami sprint. Oscar Piastri leads by over 1.6 seconds to his teammate Lando Norris. Max Verstappen is third. Antonelli stabilising now down in 4th ahead of teammate George Russell. Hamilton up to 6th ahead of Albon. Fernando Alonso currently last of the point scorers. Only the top 8 get points in a sprint race. Liam Lawson's made a decent start up into 9th ahead of his teammate Isaac Hadjar. Lance Stroll down to 11th ahead of Esteban Ocon. Carlos Sainz is 13th. Pierre Gasly 14th. Nico Hulkenberg fallen down from 11th to 15th in the Sauber ahead of Ollie Behrman. Sonoda from the back has picked up a few spots in the Red Bull, up to 17th ahead of Jack Doohan, and Gabriel Bortoletto Sauber 19th and last in this sprint race, with Charles Leclerc's Ferrari not taking to the start as he crashed his car on the way to the grid, as we're getting a nice little move a little bit further back between Carlos Sainz and Esteban Ocon. Sainz in the Williams trying to put pressure as they head uphill over the chicane that concertina's up between turn 14 and 15.
It's drying very quickly.
As Piastri says, it's drying very quickly, and we head out onto the back straight. Carlos Sainz wanted to line up a move here to get himself up to 12th.
Well, they're all very, very well behaved, I have to say. You know, there's not been any incidents. Of course, Kimi was pushed wide or had to use the extra bit of track. We're watching, is this Carlos
Sainz down the inside of Esteban Ocon at the final corner. Ocon tries the switch back and gets it done, coming back on the inside of the penultimate corner. Lovely little dice between the Haas and the Williams here. No DRS because we've got the rain out there, so that's been disabled. Sainz trying to hound Ocon once again into turn 1. Ocon defends his line. Lovely racing from the two of them.
Yeah, good stuff. And nice to see that.
I won't turn.
Hamilton struggling.
More trouble from Lewis. He's not happy there. We're watching an onboard now. I'm trying to see whether or not he's claiming that the car won't turn, but I can see quite clearly that it is going around the corner. I'm guessing what he really means is he's actually understeering more than he wants.
Now we're getting a look at the start once again, and well, it was an initial good getaway, but then in the second phase, Oscar Piastri down the inside, wheel to wheel. How do you read that one, Damon?
It's a racing incident. I mean, if I was the race director, I would look at that, or Stewart, I'd say, you know, you've got 2 guys going down to turn 1, they're both trying to outbrake each other, and of course, the guy who's got the inside line had the advantage.
I also don't think Piastri pushes Antonelli off. I think he's up the inside and Antonelli goes off on his own. Let's just have a look.
Yeah, we're getting another look on board Lando Norris, who was just behind these two. I think he might have been hoping the two in front would have both gone wide, and that would have given Lando Norris the lead. Not quite, but he keeps it on track and slots it in behind his teammates. This is the sound of the Haas driver Ollie Behrman, who's 16th on the grid. This is tough. can barely see anything, just the flashing red lights of the Formula One cars ahead of him as they brake for turn one, almost contact with one of the Saubers into turn one.
Yes, he went through a very small gap that was closing and managed to pull it off without taking either other driver off or himself. So, but I probably couldn't stop. That's why he went through the gap. Is it's very difficult to get the car slowed down. And sometimes what happens is when you, at the start of the race, people brake earlier than you expect because they have to brake early because there's cars in front of them.
Worth noting that that incident involving Antonelli and Piastri has been noted by race controls. Let's see if that gets elevated at all. On that race start as well, I have to say, hats off to Liam Lawson in the Racing Bull from 14th all the way up into 9th. He's just been on the radio saying my visor is broken, so that won't be too pleasing for him. But an absolutely mega start for the Kiwi driver who has had a really tough start to his first full-time Formula One campaign. And an update from race control, Damon. No further investigation as expected.
I was going to put a bet on that, and I'm going. Well, I would have won, but you probably wouldn't have taken it anyway. But, so no further investigation. This is racing. That's fair enough.
But we have had Max Verstappen, who's been noted for a false start, being out of position. Now that is usually a slam dunk if you've even been noted for it.
It's interesting as well because he dobbed in Norris, didn't he?
in Bahrain. Let's see, we're just getting another look as well of the move of Carlos Sainz, who tried it down the inside of Esteban Ocon. This was over 12th spot, but then Esteban Ocon came back at him through the slight left-hander of turn 18 on the inside. Lovely move from Ocon. Not for points, though. That's only for 12th and 13th. It's Piastri who leads Norris. Then it's Verstappen, Antonelli, Russell, the top 5 as the fight continues further back between the Williams and the Sauber. Albon and the other Williams is up in 7th ahead of Alonso. They are your point scorers so far. Liam Lawson is 9th. Then comes Isaac Hadjar, the top 10. Esteban Ocon still ahead of Carlos Sainz, 12th and 13th. Gasly, Hulkenberg, Behrman, Tsunoda, Doohan and Bortoleto, the 19 cars in this race. Let's check in then on lap 7 of 18 of this Miami sprint with Jenny Gap.
Yes, the cars have just flashed past me for lap 7 of this 18-lap race, and the rooster tails are rising high. Just a word on those inters. They won't like this drying weather too much. The drivers will have to look after them to make sure they actually make it to the end of this race and stay in one piece.
Yeah, absolutely. We're just getting a replay, Jen, of Max Verstappen pulling into his grid spot and looking like he is pulled too far forward, over the white line, certainly over the yellow line, which they use as a bit of a marker, as Kimi Antonelli has just run a bit deep. He hasn't lost any position there. We've cut back to the live footage briefly. But for Max Verstappen, that has been reviewed. No further investigation.
Really?
Yeah, that's just popped up now.
Well, it's quite surprising because from what I could see, he was well and truly ahead of his box.
It did look like that. We need a top-down view almost, I think, because we were riding on the camera that sits just above the driver's cockpit.
I just want to say I'm not down on Max, but I'm really commenting on what I've seen there. It did look very much like he overshot his grip.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. Well, he lives to fight another day on that one. Max Verstappen currently 3rd. Have to say, the biggest battles at the moment are going on between Carlos Sainz and Esteban Ocon. Sainz trying it once again down the inside at turn number 17, but runs deep, and that allows Esteban Ocon once again to come through. The Haas 12th, Sainz still stranded in 13th.
As we're looking now at the track, up at the sharp end with Kimi Antonelli still ahead of George Russell, but we are looking at a drying track now. They are sliding around. Once they get off that dry line, they are moving around, and you could see the tyres are starting to go off. You could see, I think these tyres are starting to overheat because I'm seeing drifting going on now there, and we're looking at Max Verstappen hunting out the wet patches. All the drivers now are starting to feel it. I think the tyres are getting through to the drying track. The sun is starting to come out even as I speak. So this is going. We've got 8 laps done of an 18-lap race. They're not going to get to the end. If this carries on drying like this, they are going to make pit stops.
Yeah, no mandatory pit stops is the standard form in a sprint race, but when you get conditions like this, you may well be forced into them as they're coming through the middle sector, heading up towards that really tight left-right chicane of 14 and 15, looking bone dry. The cars searching for the wet stuff, the wet patches, the darker parts of the asphalt on this circuit. We saw a few moments ago Kimi Antonelli actually running deep, coming through the middle sector. That's allowed George Russell to get a little closer to him, and we can see the difference in lines here as they head down that back straight. George Russell right to the inside. The two Mercedes almost swapping places as they drift from left to right across that back straight, looking for the wetter patches of the track. It's lap 9 of 18. Oscar Piastri almost 3 seconds clear now of his teammate Lando Norris. Verstappen is third.
My visor is just absolutely. I have no visibility. I don't know if it's holding on something. It's terrible.
Quite a few visor complaints so far this weekend. Verstappen being one of them.
And as he made that comment, you could see a visor rip-off. Actually, one of the cars flying through the air. So I think they're all suffering with grime and grease or whatever it is that's being thrown up from the track onto their visors. As we're watching Kimi Antonelli looking like he's throwing that car around with George right behind him. And as I see them go around, I'm not sure which turn that is, but you could see the car oversteering. They're actually drifting these cars. They're actually quite fun to watch on these tyres. But is there enough time? Are there enough laps left to come in, change tyres and go out on slicks and recover your position? Will we see people just persisting and going to the end on bald intermediate tyres?
How's the track?
Trying, but not as quick as I thought.
So Oscar Piastri saying the track is drying, not as quick as he thought. Lap 9 of 18. Piastri's 2.5 seconds up the road from his teammate Norris. I have to say, most of the gaps are fairly stabilised now, with the exception of the two Mercedes who are right on the back of each other. Antonelli just about half a second ahead of his teammate George Russell. Then it's at a further 4 seconds back to Lewis Hamilton, who has got the company of Alex Albon and the Williams just half a second behind him as well. We're heading down the back straight at the moment, looking at the two Mercedes cars. Kimi Antonelli feeling the need to, lose out or try and defend his position, I should say, from George Russell. Antonelli moving slightly to the inside line as he continues to try and keep George Russell at bay, and Russell all over the back of him once again, coming into turn 1 into the right-hander.
Yeah, right now it's still faster than slick, but by a little bit.
That was Carlos Sainz saying it still feels like we're on the right tyre, but not by too much. We're in that tricky position here where lap 10 of 18. Do you risk it in the next couple of laps, or do you try and hold on to the end?
Well, I think if Carlos is saying it's, as we're watching George Russell fighting Kimi Antonelli, actually using a bit too much track and going on to the slippery stuff, which is the extra bit of runoff and the painted bit of the track, but he's pushing really hard to catch his teammate Kimi Antonelli as we switch back to the front runners. And they, as you say, Harry, they seem to have settled into a bit of a rut here. They can't seem to get any faster than. In fact, Piastri's gone slower by a second over the last lap. They were doing 1 minute 40s. If they switch to slicks, it's possible they would be doing. They could get 5 seconds a lap more out of slicks.
I've got a lot more pace here, guys.
Yeah, copy that, George.
George Russell with the subtle let me through, I'm quicker than my teammate Kimi Antonelli here. While the Mercedes, that fight has just abated slightly, the heat has turned up on Lewis Hamilton, who is currently running in 6th place in the Ferrari. This is the sound of Alex Albon and the Williams hunting down the 7-time champion up into 8th gear, reaching speeds of over 320 kilometres an hour, trying to get into the slipstream. No DRS in these conditions before they stamp on the brakes at the 100-metre braking board into the left-hander of turn 17. A slight left-hand sweeper of turn 18 brings you out through the almost flats in these conditions. Final corner that sees you across the line. They have got DRS. The rear wing letterbox is open and then slams shut for Albon into turn 1.
It's getting close to slick.
Copy.
It's getting close to 6, and I was going to do a ready reckoning thing. We got 7 laps left, and I reckon if they went 5 seconds a lap faster, and it's a 20. Here we got. They are in the pit lane. It looks like it's going to be Max. Oh, Tsunoda.
It's Tsunoda in, Damien. Let's head down to Jenny Gao.
Yeah, he's just come in. He's gone onto a medium set of the soft tyres. Pit stop is fairly good. The loss for the pit stop is about 20 seconds. So they're taking a gamble. They were in about 15th position, but they're the first to go. Who else would do it?
Well, they've got nothing to lose with Yuki Tsunoda, have they? To get him onto that slick tyre and get him straight out again. This will be the marker that everybody looks at now on his outlap as he heads back out in 19th spot.
Good use of the teammate there again from Red Bull. Get out, get someone out there and get some feedback on whether or not slicks can be survivable. But of course, if they do 5 seconds a lap faster, and it's a 20-second difference. We're watching Ollie Behrman going deep down the inside on, I didn't see who the driver was, Gasly, okay, but he managed to make it, so good move there by Ollie Behrman. But the point, finish my point, you know, you need 4 or 5 laps, and we have, 7 laps left, so it's a very fine call, but it's not impossible to recover your loss if you do pit, but of course you'd have to overtake on slicks and go offline. That's the other factor. Looks like we might be.
Oh, Red Bull were out in the pit lane, but were they just throwing a little dummy? Lewis Hamilton is told to box, though, in the Ferrari as the mechanics come out to the grid spot, getting ready with a set of the Red Bull soft tyre rubber, and the 7-time champion is coming into the pits. Let's head back down to our pit reporter, Jenny Gow.
Yeah, it's a bold move, isn't it? From 6th place, he's coming into the pit lane. He's back out. He's gone on a set of the soft tyres, and they're just waiting for the Aston Martins to come in. They're all coming in now. Williams are coming as well. This could be the start of the whole move.
It's starting to get busy now as we're on lap 12 of 18 with the track dry enough for those at the back to make the gamble, though Lewis Hamilton coming in from 6th spot, just about to feed out on the exit of turn 1, which is where the pit lane feeds you into. He's going side by side with the Sauber of Gabriel Bortoleto, who's down in 15th position, who hasn't pitted. He's on the intermediate tyre. Hamilton then is down in 16th. That's where he feeds out. Battle at the front starts to look like it's on. Less than a second now between Piastri and Norris. Over the last couple of laps, Norris has been taking time out of his teammate. At one point, the gap was around 3 or 4 seconds, but Norris then turning up the heat once more on his teammate Oscar Piastri. He'll be within the DRS detection zone. He'll get to hit the switch where the letterbox flies open on the rear, and he steps out to the left-hand side of the track to try and find a bit more damper track, closing up into the braking zone of the left-hander of turn 17. What will the McLarens do here? Do they stay out? Do they pit? They've got to stay out.
They're going to stay out. They've got to stay out because they're in a race against each other. It only really matters what the other one does. We've got Verstappen is 5 seconds behind them. We're looking at the Mercedes pit now. It looks like they're coming in for a stop. And Max Verstappen is in the pit, it says.
Oh, he is, and he just pulls in. We've got a yellow flag out on track. Kimi Antonelli is also coming into the pits for Mercedes, and there's trouble in the pits as it looks like Antonelli has clouted over Max Verstappen's front wing. An unsafe release, perhaps from Red Bull, who release him into the path of Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes. There is damage on the front left of that Max Verstappen Red Bull. Jenny, did you see more?
Absolutely, I saw it all. So, Verstappen got released from his pit box right into the path of Antonelli, who was trying to pit as well. So that will be an unsafe release. And in the end, Antonelli couldn't get into his box. Flying bits of debris right in front of me. The front wing was seriously damaged from that Red Bull, and it's just lying in front of me. So that has gone awfully wrong for the Mercedes and Verstappen.
Sorry, Jen, as a mistake from Oscar Piastri at the chicane at 14 and 15. He has to cut the chicane. Norris piling on the pressure on his teammate. There was less than half a second between them before Piastri crossed the chicane. Meanwhile, drama because Carlos Sainz is out on track with a rear left puncture and going slowly. Verstappen a potential unsafe release and a broken front wing. Kimi Antonelli getting involved in that drama too. It's lap 13 of 18, Damon, with this sprint. And I have no idea what's going to happen over the next course.
McLaren now are looking like they're going to pull in one of their drivers for a pit stop. Which one will it be?
Well, it's got to be Oscar Piastri, the lead driver, comes into the pits, and that release is Lando Norris. He stays out there. Piastri hits his marks, makes the change, and goes on to the medium tyre and heads back out. Cleanish stop as Carlos Sainz's rather broken Williams makes it in. I think that'll be an early end to his race. Floor damage potentially to that Williams car as they try and save what is left of it for the Grand Prix qualifying later on today. George Russell also pits. Alonso in the pits. Antonelli back in as well. Hadjar coming into the pits too. So changes for pretty much every single person in this race, bar at the moment our race leader now, Lando Norris, who has stayed out another lap on those intermediate tyres and is trying. He's got 20.8 seconds the gap.
lot of debris in the chicane. There's a lot, you can't avoid it, it's all over the track, turn 13, 14.
That's Norris surely trying to push for some kind of safety car or VSC to allow him to pit and not lose position. Pit loss is about 20 seconds. He's 20 seconds the gap between himself and his teammate Oscar Piastri.
And Oscar Piastri's first time lap is a 1:47, and we had Lando Norris doing 1:42, so there's still not...
Lewis Hamilton, sorry Damon, making his way past Max Verstappen, who is out on track with a broken front wing.
Yeah, so Max is not a real genuine overtake because Max is hampered with his front wing, and he's. But of course, Lewis has been going for a few laps now on these slicks. As we're looking at the pit lane now, and McLaren is obviously going to bring Lando Norris for slick tyres.
18.7 seconds the gap as Lando Norris comes into the pits. You want 20 seconds really to try and hold your position. There is a yellow flag. Back out on the circuit. In comes Lando Norris. Jenny Gao. Oh, sorry, Jenny. We'll come back to you because Fernando Alonso has found the wall. Big damage, and that's brought out the safety car. And is that too late, though, for Lando Norris, or is it perfectly called on time? How is this going to work out? Lando Norris is coming into the exit of the pit lane now. The safety car heads out on the track. Fernando Alonso says he's okay on the radio. There's a big damage there to the Aston Martin car. I think Lando Norris has retained the lead of this Grand Prix with the help of the safety car. 2 years in a row, Lando Norris getting the benefit of a safety car around this Miami track. Oscar Piastri, second. 3 seconds behind his teammate. That was all that was in it. Hamilton is now up to third. Verstappen, who's got a broken front wing end plate, is in fourth. Albon's up to fifth. Russell sixth. Stroll seventh. Lawson eighth. They're your point scorers. Then it's Behrman, Tsunoda up into the top 10. Antonelli, Gasly, Hulkenberg, Hadjar, Ocon the top 15. Bortoletto and Doohan, the 17 remaining drivers. Alonso's just crashed out. That's what's brought out the safety car. Sainz is out with damage to his car too in a separate incident. Charles Leclerc never even made the start. And this could well end under safety car, Damon.
Lewis must be extremely upset because he pulled a blinder. He was flying, was the quickest man on the track at the time, and he's now up in third place. But of course, they brought out the safety car, so he can't press home that advantage. He was the boldest one, went onto the slicks earlier than everyone else. But now Lando, as you say, is behind the safety car. No one can overtake, and there's only 2 laps left.
I also just want to say, by the way, that's the second wet race in which Fernando Alonso has crashed in 6 races this season, which is not great.
It is not great.
I thought you liked Fernando Alonso, Andrew.
I'm an objective reporter, Damon, as you well know, from bitter experience.
Okay, you two, settle down. That's the BBC F1 correspondent Andrew Benson, alongside the 1996 F1 World Champion Damon Hill, and myself, Harry Benjamin, mediating in the box. So we just
This is interesting because watch what happens. We're watching a replay of how Carlos Sainz damaged his car, and he actually hit the wall on the entry to the chicane under the bridge, rather with his left rear. So he's got too close to the wall. It wasn't that he hit the wall, he spun and then hit the wall. He's actually clouted the wall.
Silly mistake, is it?
Yeah, it's like he was misjudged or got put off by who was that in front of him? Was that Fernando?
It was one of the Aston Martins. We haven't seen the entire collision for Fernando Alonso yet. Still waiting for that replay to come through. We're just about to get the replay of Max Verstappen being released right into the path of Kimi Antonelli. Prevented Antonelli's pitting.
Yes, come on.
Well, when Jonathan Wheatley was the sporting director at that team, pit stops were one of their top outputs down at the Red Bull team. Ever since he's left, their pit stops have not been as good. And that was Antonelli, who didn't get the chance to pit, had to go back out again, and as a result, he's now gone down to 11th because he pitted the following lap. Now we're about to see what's going on to Fernando Alonso, and it wasn't his fault. He was biffed out of the way coming through. I think that was turn 12, the right-hand U-bend corner. Liam Lawson fighting with the Kiwi in the Racing Bull car, and that spins the Aston Martin into the wall. And that is Alonso's sprint race done.
Is he excused there, Andrew? Because what we're watching, it didn't look like it was fault at all. He was just simply clouted by Liam Lawson. But they were going wheel to wheel through that last corner, and he didn't give him enough space, to be honest. He basically, Fernando Alonso used all the road on the exit. It's just a thing we have a lot at the moment with where there is runoff. They make sure that the driver can't get back onto the track, and it looks like Liam Lawson had nowhere to go or tried too hard to defend his position and clouted Fernando Alonso's right rear, which took his wheel off basically, and then he spun off into the wall.
I'm interested to see what the stewards make of that, because Liam Lawson went off the track and then came back onto the track and hit Fernando Alonso. Why was he off the track is the question.
So I'm pretty sure there was an identical incident last year between Kevin Magnussen and Logan Sargent, where Magnussen was the Liam Lawson in this situation, and I think Magnussen ended up with the penalty there. Should also say, talking of penalties, we just have to say Max Verstappen has been given a 10-second time penalty for that unsafe release in the pit lane.
We'll come back to the Jonathan Wheatley point you were going to make.
Yes.
We were watching the replays of Fernando Alonso, but we got the radio message.
Man, I don't know what to say.
Don't sweat it, Kimi. Don't sweat it.
Kimi, mini race, not relevant.
Toto Wolff, the voice of reassurance for Kimi Antonelli there. He's half right, really. It hasn't panned out for Antonelli, but the pit stop issue, well, that wasn't his fault.
Look, he's left his marker, hasn't he? You know, he's left it at the marker. He's gone, give him the right conditions. I can be the quickest guy. It all went horribly wrong for him today with the pit stop. It wasn't his fault. The Red Bull was released unsafely, so I don't know what penalty they're going to get for that. But anyway, it was something we never used to see with Red Bull. And you were talking about Jonathan Wheatley, who was a key player in the Red Bull team, moved on now. More radio message.
Great job in the pits, guys. Mega job.
Yeah, it was mega, yeah.
Lewis Hamilton, ironically then saying mega job from Ferrari. They've been hot on it with their pit stops this year, all around the 2-second mark. Yeah. But there is something to be said for that Red Bull. Jonathan Wheatley leaves, the pit stops go downhill. Of course, Wheatley's gone on to be now team principal at the Sauber team, which will become Audi.
I wonder if there's any connection. That's what we're saying here. Is it does seem like Red Bull have not been so slick with their pit stops and their strategy, and it certainly was that Jonathan Wheatley was a very key player in that team, and it's no longer there. But anyway, I was going to mention Liam Lawson. He had to come back onto the track, Andrew, because there is no more runoff. What happens is the runoff runs out as the wall comes back towards the track, so he virtually had nowhere to go. He had to come back towards the racetrack, and that's where he hit Fernando Alonso.
So you think that, in the reference to last year, you think that Lawson is going to get the penalty or Alonso is going to get the penalty?
I think it's Lawson, but I need to double check it. I'm pretty sure. I think it was last year in almost the identical. Because was it last year when Magnussen got a million penalties here for lots of different reasons? And I think also similar, he had something similar with Hamilton. Being Kevin Magnussen.
He was very pushy last year.
Yeah, he was a bit of
we do miss him.
We do like K-Bag. Yeah. He was a bit of a sacrificial lamb as well for his teammate Nico Hülkenberg many times. So not afraid to play the team game. If you're just joining us, by the way, we're in the penultimate lap of the Miami sprint race. Antonelli on the radio.
So Verstappen has got a 10-second penalty for unsafe release.
And what about Piastri?
No, nothing for him. Usual turn one.
Good to know.
So that's referring to the unsafe release for Max Verstappen into the path of Kimi Antonelli, which prevented him from pitting. He had to go back out on the track and then come back again. Antonelli's down in 11th, having started this race on pole, but he lost that lead going into turn one with a move from Piastri down the inside, wheel to wheel, and Antonelli felt like Piastri forced him off the track. That was looked into, it was noted, no further investigation. Piastri had the lead of this Grand Prix, then it started to, this sprint I should say, then it started to dry out, and who dared to go on to those dry tyres first? It was Yuki Tsunoda right at the back of the field. That was the impetus for everybody else. But then we had drama on track. Fernando Alonso in the wall. Carlos Sainz with damage as well inflicted to his Williams. That brought out the safety car as Lando Norris had pitted and was on his way out of the pits, and that has benefited him to retain the lead and take it away from his teammate Oscar Piastri as we start the final lap under safety car conditions. I've got the 1996 Formula One World Champion Damon Hill alongside me in the commentary box. We had to wait a bit to get this one underway, Damon, but I think it's delivered.
It's definitely delivered. There's plenty of action in such a short race. What was it that Toto called it? A mini race or something? I don't know, something insignificant. But congratulations to Lando Norris. He did actually put pressure on Oscar. He got a little bit fortunate, you could say, when the car crashed with Carlos Sainz and bringing out the yellow flags. So he got a little bit of a window there to come out ahead. But these two guys looked strong in those conditions, both of them. And I think if the race had been a long race, which we might see tomorrow, I think Lando was a little bit quicker than Oscar and catching him in the race. So maybe we've got the right result. Anyway, there's a small swing back towards Lando Norris in the World Championship because of this sprint race result.
Absolutely. Well, a year on in the Grand Prix terms, at least, of Lando Norris taking his first win in Formula One, helped out by a safety car, but when it came to it, he still had to deliver on the track last year. He did that. Right now, a safety car has benefited him once again, but he was closing on his teammate Piastri as well. Less points up for grabs in a sprint. Small crumbs, but you're absolutely right, Damon. Every point matters in what we think is going to be a bitter fight for this championship all the way to the checkered flag in Abu Dhabi. The safety car will peel off just at the end of this lap to allow the cars to take the checkered flag at almost full racing speed, but it will end like this. Lando Norris leading the way, Piastri second, and Lewis Hamilton a big beneficiary as well, up into third. Max Verstappen will lose a lot of positions with a 10-second time penalty applied as well. But after the end of the Miami sprint to kick off the racing action here in Miami around this Miami Dolphins NFL stadium, the safety car has peeled into the pits and round the final corner at full racing speed to take the checkered flag. Lando Norris wins the Miami sprint ahead of his teammate Oscar Piastri. Lewis Hamilton third. Albon in the Williams with a spectacular result for fourth. Russell holds on to the top five. Stroll gets more points on the board. He is scored 100% of Aston Martin's points so far this season. He finishes in sixth. Liam Lawson with a great rise up through the field, up into seventh. And Ollie Behrman, who started on the last row of the grid, making use of the chaos and the pit stop change from wet to dry. He gets the final point in eighth.
Cool. P1, well done.
Yeah, lovely job. Well done, boys.
Lovely job from Lando Norris. Behrman rounds out the top eight. Then it's Tsunoda, who was the first to pit and change onto those dry tyres. It certainly saw him rise up the field, but he won't get any points for it in ninth unless he's able to benefit from the 10-second drop, which he is, but it's still not enough to put him up. Antonelli rounds out the top 10. Gasly 11th. Hulkenberg, Hadjar, Ocon, Bortoleto the top 15, with Jack Doohan in 16th. Verstappen ending up 17th and at the back. And we lost Fernando Alonso, Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc.
Now, I can't work out how. Is this the appetizer to the main event this afternoon, which is qualifying for the main event, which is on Sunday? I mean, what a start, what a day. And, there's some guys out there, some teams who've got Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso and Williams and also Ferrari have to rebuild cars by the looks of things between now and the start of qualifying.
Well, this is the crucial thing. We'll be looking at the weather radar as well, because although it has stopped raining, it is still rather dark and grey, overcast clouds above us.
Well done, Oscar.
Yeah, thanks. Don't think I'll be buying any lottery tickets in this place.
Save the luck for tomorrow, mate.
Save the luck for tomorrow for Oscar Piastri. Yeah, he'll be annoyed to miss out on that one. He knows how crucial these points are, but he'll have to settle for those two as they head to the grid. Lewis Hamilton gets more points in the top three, Jenny, as they pull up on the grid in the 1, 2, 3 part for main positions.
That's exactly what you're paying for with Lewis Hamilton, isn't it? I'd like to know. I'm pretty certain he took that decision to go to slicks, and it benefited him. He got a bit lucky. I mean, they all had a bit of bad luck and good luck because of their safety car, but then that's the sort of thing that will happen in damp conditions, and fortune favours the brave, etc.
Lewis Hamilton just getting out of his car alongside Lando Norris with that silver, very shiny designed helmet, and he just opens his visor a little bit, stands on the front of the car, goes over to the crowd and waves to them all. Zach Brown, the boss of McLaren, is just to the right of me, and they're going over to have a quick weigh-in, as they always do. Hamilton just shaking hands with Piastri, and the two McLaren drivers also shaking hands. A big clap of the hand for Piastri. He'll be feeling a bit miffed from that result, but Lando Norris will feel elated, I'm sure, and we'll shortly hear from him, I'm sure.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. As celebrations for the McLaren, and Lando Norris's dad actually giving a handshake to Lewis Hamilton there, finishing in the top three. Zach Brown as well, straight over to Lando Norris. That'll give Lando Norris a nice bit of confidence, won't it, heading into the rest of the weekend. All of our chat in the media about having to swing back the momentum, well, he's got off to a good start.
It's going to go backwards and forwards all year long, I think. There's nothing in it between these two. I still think that when you see the longer runs and you see Lando Norris getting into a groove on let's say the tyres were going off in that situation, he seems to be able to conserve his tyres maybe Oscar was pushing a bit too hard, or we had to race. But definitely Lando was putting the pressure on him towards the end before they all decided to pit.
Well, Oscar had that 4-second gap pretty much for the majority of this race, and then as the conditions changed, Lando Norris really was taking the time out of him and got to within a second before Piastri came into the pits. And in the end, it was 3 seconds really that separated Piastri from holding on to the race lead with the safety car coming out to falling to behind his teammate. But just seeing some rather intense discussions there down at Red Bull, Damon, after that race for them.
Marko and Christian Horner, and I couldn't see who the other person was, but I mean, they are in the garage looking a little bit forlorn. They've had a bit of a bad day.
Well, let's hear from our sprint racers. They're talking to former F1 driver Romain Grosjean.
Well, Lewis, I knew you were an incredible driver, but you're also an amazing weatherman. I remember some years in Silverstone, you changed the tires at the right time, and today you do it again. So, and then the move on Max, fantastic. How was it?
How you doing, Miami? The crowd's been so great today. Oh man, I'm so happy with that. You know, it's been a tough year so far, but to have, you know, I never thought it was going to rain in Miami. It was the first time that we've all been on track in the wet here, and what a race it provided us. So big thank you, everybody.
Yeah, that must be making you feel good for qualifying in a couple of hours. Now you got the car underneath and understand how to go fast.
Oh well, I really did struggle on the Inters. I think everyone was struggling on them, and I made that call at the end. I was like, I'm coming in because I wasn't going nowhere. So take the risk, take the gamble, and it paid off. Wish we had another couple laps to give these guys a bit of a fight, but you know, big congrats to McLaren as always.
Congrats, good job.
Thank you.
Hello, Oscar. I thought you had your job done at the start. You did a fantastic start, got it under control, track dry, you come in first of the McLaren pit, and I thought, you know, you were going to score some good points to get the win today, but they're still very good points, but then I guess a bit unlucky with the timing with the safety car.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I did pretty much everything right there, so yeah, obviously a bit disappointed to come away with second, but that's how it goes sometimes. Unfortunately, racing's a pretty cool business, so yeah, hopefully that means I got a bit of luck for this afternoon and tomorrow, but no, another great start, and yeah, I had to get my elbows out in that one, so happy with what I did.
Good, yeah, I guess, and you feel good for this afternoon. Car feels good, car is fast, so should be another shot at tomorrow to get another win.
Yeah, definitely. I think we had a little bit of pace on the table in sprint qualifying yesterday, and hopefully we can use that for quality this afternoon. It'd be nice if the weather could make up its mind, but no, been enjoying it, and yeah, I think we've got a quick car underneath us, so we'll try and make it even quicker and have a bit of an easier race tomorrow.
Well, good luck, and let's watch later today.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Oh, you have to tell me how you do with safety car here. You seem to have the, you know, it's not Vegas, but you have the good mood in Miami. It's a good city for you. Yes. Congrats, a good race. You were having fantastic pace towards the end of the Inters, and then I guess you thought you were not going to be the one that had the best strategy, but it turned out to be the one.
Yeah, I mean, my luck in Miami seems pretty good at the minute, so I'm happy. But you know, the pace was still very good. It's always just difficult, these races. You never know when to box. You boxed early. You know, it paid off for Lewis, and he had a good strategy. Or do you stay out later and maybe get the safety car, you know? So it's worked 2 years in a row. I probably would prefer if this happened tomorrow rather than today, but I'll take it. I'm happy. Good job by the team. So yeah, it was good fun.
Yeah, fantastic job by you, by the team. I guess you feel super confident going into qualifying, having another shot at getting pole, and hopefully tomorrow another win in Miami.
That's the plan. Yeah, that's the plan. But it's tricky, you know. There's a lot of quick eyes out there, and I felt good yesterday, to be honest. A couple little mistakes, but I'm ready to go again. So excited.
Well, good luck, and we'll be watching.
Cheers, man. Thank you.
Your sprint race winner, Lando Norris, finishing ahead of Oscar Piastri and Lewis Hamilton. And that brings an end to the Miami Sprint. That was just the appetizer, believe it or not. We go qualifying later on for the Grand Prix. Join us for that on the BBC Sport website and app. We'll be building up from 8:45 ahead of the green light at 9 o'clock. The fight for pole for Sunday's Grand Prix will take place. My thanks to Jenny Gow, to Andrew Benson, to Damon Hill. We'll be back for qualifying later on. We'll see you then. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.